Paul Feinbaum called it the place coaches go to die, but I don't think that's true. I just think the administrations that made these last few hires missed the mark a little and caused more headache than any college football fan could have ever imagined. The media tells us that Nebraska should be pumped just to make it into a bowl game every year, and that fan expectations for our poverty program are ridiculous. They'll try to manipulate you into believing that star recruits won't come to Lincoln, that big name coaches don't want to rebuild from ground zero, or that the only thing this great university has to offer is its tradition. But I'm here to tell you that's all garbage, because the University of Nebraska is an amazing place that can attract the coach it requires to get back to winning the games it's supposed to. So today, we're going to talk about what that coach looks like, and I'll tell you the types of coaches you've got to be looking out for as Alberts continues his search. We'll talk about where Nebraska ranks as a program nationally and what some fair expectations are for this team going forward. And because everybody's asking what I think about these Frost rumors, I'll touch on that too. But what's up, guys? I'm Connor Hayden, and this is Corn Crazed. If you're a fan of Nebraska or the Big Ten, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of my coaching search updates. And if you want me to drop individual videos on some of these candidates, hit the like button now and help us get to 1,000 so I can start working on those next. But now, let's get into it.
Across midfield. Touchdown, Nebraska. Omar Manning.
He's been the main topic of discussion for the last week, and I thought Frost would just get let go and life would continue on like normal, but the rumors have gotten crazy and I tried to ignore them all until now. And I'm not going to expand on what the rumors are since that's how stuff gets blown way out of proportion. But if you go on Twitter, you'll see videos from multiple people close to the program with their own stories about unholy conversations on a lake, missed meetings, and basically a coach who wasn't making his job to run this program a priority. And what frustrates me here isn't that Frost was the wrong guy. The annoying part is that so many people who either worked with him or were close to the program knew he was the wrong guy, but he still managed to keep his job anyway. And his fans were left in the dark because no one shares info outside of that building. So if Trev Alberts says Frost deserves another year after going 3-9, he's effectively insinuating that Frost has his shit together and he hasn't learned anything in those first 6 months on the job that would make him believe otherwise. If you're working for the school or you're a well-known alumni or media member, why didn't you talk to Trev or somebody else in charge and encourage change sooner? Why did people stand by knowing full well there was a cancer in the building but not address that cancer until after it was flushed out? Now, to be fair, they very well could have said something, and since Trev came in last summer, he had to do his own analysis on the situation. So I'm not calling anybody out or accusing them of being toxic for no reason. I just wish we would have more answers as to why he had kept his job for so long if these rumors are true. And I've got a feeling they are true since Trev was so willing to cough up that extra 7.5 just for 3 weeks. At the end of the day, I guess I'm just happy Moose is gone since he wasn't doing his job and he just assumed Frost had things under control, and that now Alberts has a chance to come in and make the right hire and get a coach in who can lead this program into a new era of greatness. Tonight, we have the Corn Crazed Social Club live stream at 4:15 Pacific, 6:15 Central. And my guest this week's going to have some great insight on the type of coach Alberts needs to hire. He's the former Florida and Ohio State wide receivers coach under Urban Meyer. Zach Smith is joining me to talk about where this job ranks nationally, what our expectations should be, and I'm definitely going to find out what the excuse is for not tackling in practice. I've listened to his content since day one when he explained what happened at Ohio State, why he was fired, and how the lies that were proven to be lies in court messed up his life. But he bounced back strong, and now he has his own very successful podcast talking about college football and ties in stories from his own career. So that'll be a really good show, and I cannot wait to see you there. And if you can't make it to the live, I'll make sure the replay goes up right after so you can still check it out later tonight. At the game on Saturday, I saw a few of you wearing the merch, and it looked pretty good on. So this week, I'm going to run a promo. If you buy any t-shirt or any hoodie by Sunday the 25th, I'm going to send out a sticker pack and a wristband pack with that order for free. So if you've ever thought about supporting the channel or you just want to get the highest quality merch out there, you can click the link in my description or head to corncraze.com to see what we got. Now back to the head coach talk. I'm not giving you any candidate breakdowns or who my number one choice is today because we've got a lot of season left and almost everybody who's getting looked at is still trying to win for their current school. So you've heard the names, and I guess there are 4 or 5 legitimate contenders with another 8 or so as backup options, depending on how the top choices finish off this season or if any of those top guys say that they want to stay where they're at. So I'll work on a video this weekend outlining some of Trev's options, and I'll go through the pros and cons for guys like Campbell, Aranda, Leipold, and we'll start to narrow down my list for who I think would be the right pick. And it's important we start by establishing how the Nebraska job ranks nationally, since we have to identify what type of coach is reasonable to go after. And it's impossible to rank the jobs perfectly, so rather than do a list, I'm just going to outline the tiers for the top 30 jobs in the country. So in Tier 1, I've got the traditional blue bloods like SC, Bama, Notre Dame, and Oklahoma, plus the schools with a great track record recently who've all proven they can compete for conference and national titles on a yearly basis. All of these schools have some of the largest and most diehard fan bases. They've got great tradition. They have access to the best recruits based on location or because they've got a really well-known brand. And money's not an issue, so they could pay all their coaches $10 million plus a year, no problem. Their facilities are amazing, or they're going to be in the near future after some remodels, and almost any coach in the country would leave their current job for an opportunity with a Tier 1 program. Nebraska was Tier 1 when I was growing up, but after the move to the Big Ten, they fell out after way too many non-competitive losses and losing seasons, which brings us to Tier 2. These schools all lack at least one thing that Tier 1 programs have. A&M lacks championship tradition. Nebraska doesn't have a strong recruiting base and hasn't landed a 5-star in almost 20 years. Miami can't fill their stadium even when they're in the top 25. So you get the point. These teams won't always lose their coach to another program if they're having success, but the Tier 1 schools have a little bit more to offer than everybody else listed here. So these programs can all get big name coaches to come, but when it comes down to landing a guy like Lincoln Riley or Dabo Swinney, they're the second choice. Tier 3 schools have decent tradition in recruiting with success recently, but they're usually forced to go with an alumni or an up-and-comer. Oklahoma State has their former QB as head coach. Ole Miss took Lane Kiffin after he had success at FAU, and North Carolina grabbed Mac Brown after he took a few years off. Nebraska hasn't fallen this low because the fan support is so insane, the facilities are as good as any Tier 1, and the brand still carries weight since coaches are old enough to remember the good old days. But they could be in competition with some of these Tier 3s for coaches if they don't start winning more soon. Now that we've identified where Nebraska ranks as a program nationally, let's talk about what some realistic expectations should be for this next staff, because even though the public tries to downplay Nebraska, there's a lot of money. And there's unmatched fan support, and there's an administration who's all in on bringing the program back to national relevancy. Not that we're not relevant now, just hoping we can get back to being relevant in a positive way. So 5 expectations. Number 1 is to reach a bowl game every season. Scott Frost failed miserably with this one because he never once got to 6 wins, even though he inherited a team who had gone bowling 9 of the 10 seasons before he took over. Bo Pelini made a bowl game every year he was in charge, 3 times in the Big 12 and 4 times in the Big 10, and he never finished a season with less than 9 wins. The West is the weakest of the 2 Big 10 divisions, and Nebraska always schedules 2 quote-unquote free wins to start off the year. So 6-6 is the absolute worst record we should see in Lincoln, even if it's a rebuilding year. Number 2, be competitive in games against opponents ranked in the top 25. Bo lost his job over this. Well, it was other things too, but this is how I justify it in my head. There are a few games every season that matter, and Bo never had his team ready to go in those moments. Mike Riley obviously didn't either, and the problem isn't losing a couple of those. It's losing them by 35 plus, because that kills the spirit. If Scott Frost did one thing right, it was that he got his guys ready to play anybody tough, and he kept the team believing that they had a shot all the way until the end. You don't need to win every game you play, but getting blown out kills momentum for the rest of the year. Number 3, finish the season ranked top 25 nationally 2 out of every 3 years. From 1969 to 2012, quick math, that's 49 years, Nebraska finished the season ranked 41 times. Tom Osborne never finished a season outside the top 25. and Bo Pelini's teams finished ranked 4 out of his 7 seasons. To finish top 25, the team needs to win 8 in the regular season, then finish strong in the bowl, or just win 9 or 10 total. Wisconsin's finished ranked 6 out of the last 10 years, and Iowa's done it 5 out of 10. Under the right coach, this is absolutely possible, and finishing as well as Iowa or Wisconsin has these last few years should be a minimum expectation. Number 4, win the Big Ten West once in every 3 seasons. And that's actually a low expectation since the West really only has one consistent top dog in Wisconsin. Iowa, Northwestern, or even Minnesota in their best years are rarely ever dominant, or at least not to the level of an Ohio State, who you can almost automatically write off as the East champ every year. If Nebraska could play for a Big Ten championship 3 times in a decade and maybe win one of them, college football would be a better place and Nebraska fans would finally be happy again. And last at number 5, finish in the top 25 for recruiting nationally every season and send 3 players to the NFL each year. Recruiting a top 25 class has never been a problem here, and I'm guessing even if it's hard next year, a good coach will have those numbers back up pretty quick. Iowa and Wisconsin have both landed 5-star talent recently, and even though stars aren't everything, if you look at the best schools in the country who win consistently, you'll notice their rosters are filled with guys who are highly rated as recruits. Nebraska's in-state talent's been amazing lately, so if they can lock down the state again, which is something Frost failed to do, and get back to showing they can compete for West titles, the top-tier facilities and the insanely loyal fan base is going to push Nebraska over the top and bring in the players this new staff is going to need if they're going to live up to these 5 expectations. Developing your players and sending them to the NFL is actually your number 1 recruiting pitch, and it's something Nebraska hasn't been too good at these last few years. But if you look at the other schools in the West, Purdue, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, even Northwestern, they all have better recruiting classes because of their player development. If Nebraska can get back to doing that, these class rankings are going to shoot up. What kind of coach is ready for a job this big? And what kind of coach is going to be ready to rebuild this program that's been on the decline for almost 10 years now? What people don't realize about being the head coach at a place like Nebraska is that there's a lot more to that title than just coaching guys up on the field. The head coach is essentially the CEO of a $100+ million business with dozens of staff members and a team of over 100 guys he has to recruit to come in and then manage and develop once they get there. So coaching in games is a part of the job for sure, but he has to spend a lot more time recruiting, managing the support staff, dealing with the donors and the people financing big projects like the $150 million facility and everything else that goes into the job for the 300 days of the year when they aren't playing games. When people talk about Mickey Joseph taking over full-time in December, I love hearing the idea of it. I like imagining another passionate former player ready to lead the way and bring the team back to what he remembers them as when he was in school. But do you realize how hard it is to go from working with a position group to overseeing the entire program? Scott Frost was one of the best position coaches and coordinators in the country back when I-Course hired Mike Riley. But he wasn't considered for the head coaching job because it would have been the equivalent of promoting the store manager at Walmart to the CEO. There's so much more to manage when you hold that top position. So if you haven't learned how the entire operation works, it can be overwhelming. And even with Frost's 2 years at UCF, the experience wasn't enough for him to take on the massive job he signed up for. Mickey's an expert recruiter. He's great with the receivers, and this week we learned that he's pretty good at evaluating staff performance and making tough decisions, which was probably Frost's greatest weakness. Maybe he earns the job over the next few months and shows Trev that he can oversee this major rebuild. But if he can't, here's some key things we should be looking for on the next guy's resume. Number 1, Big Ten or SEC coordinator experience. I'd also accept Big 12, ACC, or Pac-12, but because the SEC and the Big Ten are so much different than those other conferences, it would have to be with a team who was competing for conference championships while he was there. The coordinators are responsible for the game plans on each side of the ball, so proven success as a coordinator means this coach will have a pretty good idea of what it takes to win in the West. Quick note here. It's really unlikely that a school like Nebraska would take somebody with 0 head coaching experience, although Oregon just did it with Dan Lanning and OU did it with Venables. But if they were to, that coordinator would have to come from a playoff caliber team like Georgia or Clemson with a long history of proven success in their role. Number 2, Power 5 head coaching experience. But that needs more of an explanation because it's not that simple. If you get a coach from Baylor, Oregon State, or Cincinnati, for example, they need to have shown they can beat the teams they're supposed to and upset some of the ones they weren't. Nebraska's never going to steal a good coach from another Tier 1 or Tier 2 program. So odds are they're going to be looking at overachieving coaches from schools with 7-win expectations. I think another point worth noting here is that if Nebraska did go after an ACC or a Pac-12 head coach who was competing for conference championships, it would be important for Trev to look into that school's style of play to find out how it would translate in a more physical conference. Number 3, a great recruiter. Nebraska's an amazing place, and when they're winning, it's hard to argue it's not a top 5 atmosphere in the entire country. But recruiting to Lincoln now with the cabinets empty and no real trophies since before these high school kids were born isn't going to be an easy task. The players needed to compete for Big Ten championships all live almost 500 miles away from campus, so having ties to a territory that the staff can tap into is going to be crucial. Frost had fantastic ties to schools in Florida. He just couldn't keep the guys there long enough to see how good they actually were. Number 4, a great player developer. Odds are these classes are always going to rank somewhere between 20 and 30, which is fine because theoretically you have top 25 talent every year that way. But most of the kids coming through Lincoln are hard-working Nebraskans who want nothing more than to win for their state. Imagine if Brent Venables was at Nebraska working with Luke Reimer, Nick Henrich, or Garrett Nelson. How high do you think their ceiling is under the right guidance? This staff needs to develop the Midwest kids who we know have the work ethic and desire, but need help to turn the corner to become an amazing football player. On the flip side, look at how many 4-star players came from out of state and ended up riding the bench all 4 years. Sure, some weren't going to pan out wherever they went, but with the right coach, that success rate makes a significant jump. Number 5, history building a program from 0 to 100. Nebraska is one of the most down bad programs in the nation, and I'll be the first one to admit I never thought it would get any worse than what Mike Riley left behind in 2017, but this post-Frost era actually might be the new low. Watching guys like Dave Aranda go from 2 wins to 12 wins in just a year, or Lane Kiffin taking Ole Miss from 5 wins to 10 in that same time span, or even Lincoln Riley taking USC from mediocrity to legitimate playoff hopes in year 1, tells me that 5-year rebuilds aren't really a thing. Coaches today only need 2 years, or maybe 3 if they're not as lucky. The reason Leipold at Kansas is so attractive is because Kansas was in the hole as deep as Nebraska is, and now they're competing at a really high level in only his 2nd season. These 5 points aren't job requirements, but over the next week or so, I'll be making multiple videos about candidates Trev Alberts is likely talking to, and we'll see how many of these points end up on those coaches' resumes. This is just my first video about the head coach search, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss the next one I drop, because this is going to be the best content you'll find anywhere online talking about Nebraska's potential hires. But I want to know what you think, so let me know in the comments below. Are my expectations fair, or do you think I set the bar too high? Would you rather the next head coach have Big Ten or SEC coordinator experience, or would you be okay with someone from the Pac-12 or the ACC? I think we can all agree a non-Power 5 head coach is out of the question, but how would you feel about a guy like Jamie Chadwell from Coastal or Luke Fickell from Cincy? I'd have a tough time with those because wins over Tulane and Troy only mean so much. But that's all I got for today, so thank you for being here, and I'll see you on the live stream later. Go Big Red.